when we take the square root of something, so we take the square root of 49, okay, we're finding what number times itself is equal to 49. Okay, the answer is plus or minus 7. Okay, in other words, I could take negative 7 times negative 7 equals 49, or I could take positive 7 times positive 7, and that equals 49. Okay, they both work. That light glare is just going to be terrible. Okay. What happens, say I'm talking about the square root of 16, if I have a negative in there? Okay. Can you take the square root of a negative? So far the answer has been no, right? I tried plugging that in my calculator, it gives me a problem. Because you can't have a negative times a negative and get a negative. It's not going to work. Okay? You can't put a negative times a positive in here because then it's not the square root. Right? What number times itself is going to equal a negative? Well, there isn't one. So what we have is we have this little thing called the imaginary unit. Or an imaginary number. Oops, sorry. Called I. Okay. And the imaginary unit, or imaginary number, is equal to the square root of negative 1. Okay, now this is actually very useful in the real world. When you start dealing with electronics, you start dealing with imaginary numbers a lot. Alright, so if I have square root of that negative 16, I can actually work with it. I can come up with a solution other than just no solution, which is what we've done in the past. That is, I can rewrite it. I can rewrite it using a rule that we learned as a negative 1, or excuse me, a 16 times a negative 1. Okay? Which I can rewrite as the square root of 16 times the square root of negative 1. Okay, well, what's the square root of 16? I hope you said plus or minus 4 times the square root of negative 1, which is an I. Okay, so the square root of a negative 16 is equal to plus or minus 4. Now, another little rule, if we've got I squared, that's equal to a negative 1. Well, that kind of makes sense, right? Say I've got I equaling the square root of negative 1. I'm going to go ahead and square both sides. Right? Okay, left with an I squared here equaling, well, the square root of a square just undoes itself, so I'm left with what's ever inside that square root, so it's equal to negative 1. Sorry, I forgot the square. So I squared equals a negative 1.